Here's this agile thing with Mike Markey and Matt Beam and also Jeff
You know,
Singleton.
one of the things I was thinking about, I've been thinking about a lot of things this week. Mainly why transformation efforts are generally failures.
I have a theory. Go on.
I think in addition to that, maybe we're engaging in trying to teach them the wrong things, or maybe we're focusing on some of the wrong things, or maybe not focusing on the wrong things. We're not focusing enough on the right things. We talk about all of the mechanics, and some of us even get into a lot of philosophy and concept, and getting the right mindset.
Yes, we do.
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
But so we want people to adopt an agile mindset. Well, what the heck is an agile mindset? And I think it gets into this squishy area, and that makes people feel uncomfortable, especially leadership. Like, oh, what do you mean by that? Because I can't measure that. Yeah, you're darn straight you can't measure that. Doesn't mean that it isn't effective, but you are correct. You cannot measure that. And so that squishiness, I think I've noticed, I don't know if it turns people off or just they shut down or they feel like, just tell me what to do, okay? Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, I think people ambiguity is hard for people. They want to know what's going to happen when, and when do they get their cheese, and not to be dismissive, but that's a deeply human thing. Just feeling not knowing is hard.
I would like to go back to something you said though, where you said, "Just tell me what to do."
Mm-hmm.
Who really wants to be told what to do?
Oddly enough, at least the last two, and probably more, clients, I have had team members in exasperation say, just tell me what to do.
Right.
And so we explore that. Why do you want me to tell you what to do? Because that's what we're used to. And therein lies the issue. They're used to this behavior. And so to shift them outside of that means, even if management has said, we empower you, you are empowered to make decisions, you are empowered to think for yourselves, and they actually walk the talk. The other issue is these folks are not used to thinking for themselves. They're used to a behavioral environment where I'll tell you what to do, I'll throw it over the wall to you, and you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so suddenly we're going to tell them, okay, all that other stuff, forget about it. We want you to think for yourselves. Huh?
And so then you get fast forward some number of minutes, days, hours, weeks, and then they say, screw it, just tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So something took them to a place where they went, I don't want to think about this now. I don't want to be the one to make these decisions. I don't accept the responsibility that you are implying that I have, or I don't truly feel I have the responsibility that you are implying that I have. This is my supposition. What do you think?
I think sometimes you're right. I think you're right that sometimes that is the case.
Sometimes
Also,
I think
you're
you're
not
right.
always right.
Yeah.
You could think of it as unfair to take somebody whose understanding was, their working agreement was, you tell me what to do and I execute. And then I guess maybe this is the change management part of it, recast the understanding to say, we're no longer going to give you a list of things to do. We're going to give you valuable problems to solve and a direction to go in. And we'll talk it through as you make progress, but you get to explore and you get to decide how to implement. That is a different, it goes from just being a doer to also having to decide what to do and then doing. That's effectively more work. It's a bigger scope. It's more responsibility. And some people want that, and some people maybe just don't want it. It's more of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so let's assume for a second that your statement when you say, well, some people just don't want that. I'm still going to challenge that. I still think that on some level, everyone would like to have some level of autonomy and some level of self-determination, that they didn't take their job to be just a mindless drone, just executing orders. So something has placed them into a mindset.
Yeah.
A mental model, if you will.
I will. Thank you.
And that mental model will say, I do what I'm told.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about the consequences. I don't think about the results. I don't worry about those things. That's what you do. You just tell me what to do and I do it. And I think that is an evolved state. I don't think, or a devolved state. I think that it's something that you come to. You don't come into the job with that intention.
Could you think of it as learned helplessness, or would that be too far of a leap?
Well, I like that. I like that notion. It is.
Yeah.
It's for whatever reason, maybe opportunities for self-direction were attempted to. I tried to tell you what I wanted to do, and I was shut down. I tried to tell you what I'd like to do, and was told that that's not what we're doing. That's not the direction. Thank you, not much at all for your opinion. Right. So you just learn to just exist. And then we wonder why we've got people who don't have a sense of urgency around getting stuff done.
I mean, I think that reality is always more complex. I think it can be both and. I think some people really don't. I don't know how many. I don't know that it's that many, but I do acknowledge it. Also, people like, just because somebody shows up at work one day and says, "Hey, guess what? Congratulations, Merry Christmas. You now have the freedom to do stuff." Does not mean that they're convinced that it's safe, or that something bad isn't going to happen if they choose the wrong thing. Like it, I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
So 100%. I totally buy what you just said. So we're trying to go back to Jeff's earlier point, we're trying to do a transformation and we're trying to evoke agility, but do we have their permission to grant them agility, to grant them the opportunity to do that? This is not a coach walks in and says, you are now a self-directed team. That means this. Does not mean you have buy-in from all of leadership. You don't have buy-in from the team. You don't have buy-in from the middle manager folks that are also influencing this. It's you expressing your philosophy that is flying in the face of their corporate culture.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So even if the intent is to bring a change to that corporate culture, do we have alignment on the path to that place? And have we sufficiently invited them to participate in it?
Sometimes no, and that is a failure. However, I can think of one particular instance in which middle and upper management, to varying degrees, pushed all their chips into the middle of the table and said, we're all in. And so there was a supportive environment. And yet, the problem was and maybe, maybe there's this expectation, even from coaches, frankly, that even though it's not flipping on a light switch, you do want to get some movement of the needle towards, embrace of autonomous teams being able to think for themselves. And yet, you still get this, just tell me what to do, okay? Because it's, I don't know, if it's more work, it's almost as if there's this inertia, or at least momentum in a different direction. This is the direction we're used to going in.
Yeah.
And now we're being told, and to the point that I just made, everybody was all in, all the way upstream. And they could make their own decisions, but they wouldn't. It took a long time. Now, fast forward to the end of the story. Some teams actually did, the light bulb finally went on, but it took months. I mean, months. Many, many sprints down the road, as if to say, well, I know what you told us, and not coach told us. I know what you as management and leadership told us, but I'm not so sure about that. And then some teams got it, and they said, hey, we actually do have this freedom, some latitude, I'll call it. I won't call it total freedom. We have this latitude, and they got it. Again, a light bulb moment. But then there were other teams that were like, just tell me what to do, okay? And I thought, okay, so this was actually a good test environment, because we have a stable environment, fairly stable environment, and you've got a set of teams, quite a few actually. Why do, these 4 or 5 teams get it, and these 3 or 4, just tell me what to do? They're in the same environment.
I have a question. Did you see a relationship between the rate of failure and the rate of adoption of the new thing? My hypothesis, or not really a hypothesis, my guess might be the teams who got it screwed up a couple of times and saw that it was not the end of the world, and sensed that they had more freedom than they thought they did, and it was safe to try stuff that might fail, and thereby were able to change their mindset, mental model, whatever. And the other teams were like, why don't you give me a recipe?
I'll see your theory and I'll offer a counter theory.
I believe the term is raise, but go ahead.
No, I'm not raising.
Okay, got it. I don't know how
It's
poker
more
works.
of a call. All right,
No,
so your suggestion is that teams that have base struggle and not been attacked for it, or not faced retribution for it, will now embrace their newfound freedom because they feel safe to go forward. What if the opposite is true? What if the teams that are going for it, or the ones who are cooperative and still going along, are the ones who bought into this supposed newfound freedom, but they have not yet challenged it, so they don't have any proof that they don't have it. And the teams that are resisting are the ones that actually did make a mistake, and they did not be met with the freedom to make those mistakes. So two sides of the coin.
Again, reality, the map is not the territory. I think you'll find every single one of these if you get out with your boots on. Yeah.
Okay, so we both came up with a theory. Jeff, what did you what do you think?
I actually like both of those theories, especially the counter theory, because I think intuitively we tend to think like Matt, okay, those that were provided the opportunity to fail and failed, and they grew from it, hopefully. In reality, in this situation, both the teams that embraced and the teams that didn't embrace failed fairly easily themselves. I mean, I won't say nobody fails equally. Some fail more than others. But the ones that grew, they had their share of failures. But the ones that just wanted somebody to tell them what to do, they had probably an equal number of failures. And so if it's the same environment or similar environment, the failure rate was not really a variable that, I don't know, might have been a factor because they both failed.
So psychological safety, not a problem is what I hear you saying.
Generally, no.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's always growth opportunity there in any organization. But yeah, generally, pretty psychologically safe organization.
Were there different types of stuff that they were working on? Or was the team that I don't know, let's pull another. Was the team that seemed to embrace the self-direction in a more UI, UX open, less technical, more creative? Was the more creative? No.
Similar, yeah. Different applications, but very similar.
What about level of maturity of the people on the team?
Now that might have something to do with it, and I can't speak to everybody on all the teams, or I don't know, about 15, 16 teams or something. But yeah, I think some definitely had a predilection towards learning and excelling, and others were just kind of like, just tell me what to do.
So if we take the two sides of the coin and we take what you're saying, it almost sounds like you're saying that people at the extremes, the people who are that both people have a potential to do well, and the people who stay in the middle don't really push. So if we had a team full of youngsters just fresh out of school, they don't know any better, and they're going to learn from each other and they're going to try and get through this thing, I think they tend to embrace this stuff easier. Like, I've seen a lot of young people joining teams, a lot of interns joining teams who have responded like hungry people wanting to learn. They wanted to experience stuff. And then there's the highly experienced people who have for years have wanted to just call the shots, and they have not been allowed to call the shots. They feel they've been held back by people, and they are also willing to jump in and embrace. So one embracing out of a overabundance of self-awareness, and the other one an overabundance of lack of
sheer
experience.
enthusiasm.
Yeah, sheer enthusiasm. So you got those. So both of those are recipes for people who want to engage in this. Then there's the people in the middle who have not been distinguishing themselves as trailblazers, and they've not been really doing a whole lot of learning. They've just been sort of getting along, and so maybe their self-direction muscle isn't quite as developed.
Interesting.
I'll allow it.
Okay.
So
yeah, go on.
No, you go.
All right, I'll go. This is really, I'm kidding. Is this not an example of why really, what would you say, leadership rallying people. What was the genius of the one that get everybody to march? You want
The
people
the
excited.
was it enablement? Was it no? Dang it! Which one was it?
Can't think of it.
You're killing me now.
I know, right,
I know you're
Smalls?
pulling something. You're pulling something out of off the shelf. I can't think of
Inspirational is the word I'm thinking of.
it.
Oh, okay.
Inspirational leadership. We have to go this way.
Sure.
Who's with
Yeah.
me? More words than that. But you have to mobilize people in their emotions. Is that not? If you're especially if you're talking about transformation, look, change is hard. Even if you know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, why the boat's burning, where the thing is in the future, like you know everything and everybody's aligned, it's still a lot of work. So can you get there without all of those pieces? And I'm not saying you didn't have inspirational leadership there, Jeff, the thing you're talking about, but like, can you expect people to move and do a hard change without really, really, really encouraging them?
So I think you're onto something here. So the short answer is yes, they did have inspirational leadership. The longer answer is, and this is a suspicion that I have, that it really is. It gets down to a flaw that we see in any of these models, whether it's ADKAR or any of the change Cotter, any of the change leadership. I don't want to call it change management, change leadership styles and models. And it presupposes that, okay, you follow this model and it'll work. And yeah, maybe in a larger sense it does or it can, but I think it ignores in many cases that change is also very much personal at the individual level. And, given a couple hundred people divided up amongst a bunch of teams, some are going to get it. Some are definitely not going to get it that's because they don't want to get it. And there are some that are kind of somewhere on the fence or something. And, maybe the ones that, certainly the ones that get it, you don't have to convince them. It's the ones that are the fence sitters that you're really, we as coaches are trying to move them along, because the ones that are squarely dug in against, they usually identify themselves pretty early on. And we know, okay, well, I'm just spitting in the wind if I'm going to spend time trying to make this person trying to move, because we can't make anybody do anything. So I think it's at the very personal level.
Totally. And to be fair to the last group, maybe some of them get it, but they just don't want it. Like maybe they joined the organization when it was in a certain place, and they signed an implicit contract, and now somebody comes along and changes the way stuff. I understand. I'm out. I've met people like that.
We used to say it was true, like that people got into development because they could sit alone in a corner with their thoughts and make things happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And they got into that model. And then we came in and said, oh, remember that social skill that you never developed? Well, now we're going to force you to use it.
Congratulations. Half your
yes.
job is now something you hate. It's called collaboration. You're welcome.
So, I mean, I think this all comes down to the fact that you can't cookie cutter a solution, right? That you're still ultimately pulling individuals with their own faults and fears and capabilities and stuff, and you're trying to meld them together into a functioning unit, and there is no recipe for that. It's more like being a cook than being a recipe follower. Like, when my wife will say that I'm a better cook than she is, because I can go into the pantry, look around at what we have, and create a meal or a something out of it, right? Whereas she'll look at the pantry and go, I just see ingredients, right? And then she'll go and she'll peruse websites for like she'll go, maybe I want something with chicken, and she'll look up chicken, and then she'll find a recipe, and then she'll say, oh, do we have one of those things? Right. And in the meantime, I got water boiling and I got stuff going. I got, so I think what we're talking about is cooking these teams is more an act of, because cooking isn't just throw stuff in a pot and hope for the best. It's throw stuff and then taste it and go, this needs a little more of this, and we need to adjust the recipe, or we need to pull more of this flavor, or we need to reduce that aspect of it or something. And then you get toward what you hope is a fully functioning meal by the end.
So what I hear you saying is that as you take people and put them into a great big cauldron of boiling water and cook them, you need to taste the water to make sure that the team is working correctly. Do I understand that metaphor?
Is that what you heard? That's what you took away from this.
Look, man, communication's what the listener does. And that, okay. I'm sorry. That's what we got.
It's not a perfect metaphor, but
metaphors by definition are imperfect.
But if you're making soup, you have to taste the soup. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty, it's the analogy to me would be a coach who comes in and says, here's my material. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what you're going to do, without sensing and responding how the team is even hearing it or agrees, or is it appropriate? Does it need to be tailored?
Were you not informed that you are a self-governing team?
Exactly.
Go forth and self-govern.
Mm-hmm.
Do. Yeah. So, yeah, we have to be responsive to the needs of the teams, the needs of the organization. We need to know what we're looking at and recognize the patterns that we've seen before and apply them.
And the needs of the individual.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, and you pointed this out a couple of minutes ago, you may recall a financial institution that we were both working with at one time, maybe. And one of the individuals on one of the teams, I had a one-on-one with him, and he said, you know what? I've been here 30 years. And I'll be damned if you're going to upset my last 3 years before I retire. So, oh. He's like, I get this agile thing. I get it. But I don't care. I've got 3 years to retirement. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let you.
And I was
you
coasting
come here
along
and upset
just
my
fine.
Apple Card.
I have been coasting along just fine under the radar. I'm not making waves. I'm doing the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you say to that person? Because that I have a number of thoughts that spring immediately to mind.
I said, first of all, and this had followed a session, a stand-up that they had that I sat in on, quietly observing, but having my camera on. It was obvious I was there. I was trying to model the behavior that I'm looking for from them, and they weren't picking up on it so much. But one of the team members said, oh, this is the coach. He's going to come in here and make us agile. It's like, oh,
that's how it works, all right.
Yeah. So let me explain something to you. I'm not going to make you anything. That's not my job. There's only one person that can make you agile, and that is you. And you and you and you and you. I'm not going to make anybody do anything. I'll show you some things that I know that work. And that conversation afterwards I had with the, I won't call him a scrum master, but he was their team lead. And that was when he said, well, I've been here 30 years and I get this, but ain't going to happen. Not on my watch.
Narrator voice. Did he in fact get it?
No.
No. Okay.
I think in theory he did. He was a smart guy. He was definitely a smart guy. But he didn't see the incentive for him personally to invest the time and effort to shift his behaviors when he's got a little bit of runway left. So he's like, all right, no. And so my response is, I'm not going to make you do anything. But there are some things that could make your life easier for the remainder of the time that you want to spend here. And I'd be more than happy to share my experiences and, use them to your benefit or not.
I like that approach, leading with the idea that like I'm actually here to help you go downhill. Like this, if I'm doing my job well, there'll be challenges, but your life will get better, and you should have an easier time with stuff. But the first thought that I had was, do you think he was putting his interests ahead of the interest of the organization?
Oh, clearly. Clearly. But everybody, and Mike knows this, most of the people in that organization.
Oh, he was just following how things were done there.
Yeah. And then if you've been there for 30 years, everybody staked their claim as like, hey, they had contractors that were there for 10, 15 years. Like, wow. Talk about a gravy train. Anyway, yeah. I digress.
I gotta say though, if it is the one I'm thinking it is, they also had that non-conflict thing that drove their culture. I'm amazed you got that response out of somebody.
He must have been really pissed, huh?
Yeah.
What did you do? You just sat there with a camera on? That doesn't make sense.
Stop looking at me. When you go through a coaching arc, when you're taking somebody through a coaching experience, you start out with an agreement that we're going to have a conversation, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here. We're going to talk about solutions, and usually those solutions are sitting within their realm. Like they probably already know what the right thing to do is. They just don't know when to do it, or they can't decide to do it. Mm. And that's when you're doing pure coaching, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to advising or consulting.
Yes.
But you'll go through and you'll explore their concerns, and then they'll talk about, and then you can lead them to talk about options that they could consider. And then, ultimately you get around to the part where you kind of tighten the noose and you say, all right, so what are you going to do?
It's an unfortunate metaphor. Go on.
Well, you're going to now hold their feet to the fire. You're going to say, which of those options we've discussed are you going to commit to doing?
Yeah.
And then how are you going to hold yourself accountable?
Accountability. Yes.
And once you do that, how are you going to celebrate that you've achieved that? But there is a point in every one of these conversations, and I've watched a lot of the conversations go on, the point at which you turn that conversation from just talking about the problem or even just talking about the solutions and trying to nail them down to commit to something.
Every single one of these is a physical violent. Anyway, go ahead.
That's when
I hear you. Please continue.
Once you try and get them to do that, that's when you hit resistance. And when you are the person being coached, that's the point at which you feel that little weight in the pit of your stomach, like, oh man, like now I have to do something.
Commitment.
100%. And so I think what's really important to point out there is the distinction you made at the start, which is that this is in the context of a coaching conversation, right? Because coaching is about helping the person make difficult changes. Advising isn't necessarily about that, right?
No, consulting, advising, that's very different. That is, you are there to give answers. But in the teaching people to fish versus giving them fish, consulting and advising is giving fish, right? Coaching is teaching them to fish.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jeff has thoughts.
You might start with, we're going to do some knowledge transfer. I'm going to give you some options, but I'm not going to tell you which one to select. Right.
I guess what I'm getting at is like some people want to do that, some people don't want to do that. So would you say that there is a natural progression from advising, consulting, advising, coaching? Like some people just want to hear some ideas. Some people want some analysis and ideas and facts and assessment. Some people want all that context, and then they want you to help them change their behavior, which is a higher commitment and difficulty. In which case you have to set up the explicit contract or explicit agreement that, look, I'm going to tell you some stuff and you're not going to like it, maybe. And remember that you asked me to do that, please.
I think we wear both hats, honestly.
Well, it's more than two.
Yeah,
We have
it
all
is
those,
more.
right?
It
It's
is,
when we
yeah.
talked about the coaching stances. There's being a teacher, there's being a mentor, there's being a advisor, there's being a coach, right? So you have to you apply the right tool at the right time, right? Like in the early days when they don't know what's what, you're there because you are the subject matter expert, and you can help them get moving, right? You can reinforce the learnings. We've gone through training. We've taught you everything you should know, but you haven't applied it yet. So I'm going to walk you through the applying. So we do a shu-ha-ri thing. We show them, and then we let them step off on their own and do it, but you're watching closely, and then you step back, and then they continue doing it. So in each of those cases, you will be in a different coaching stance. By the time you hit the last one, it's almost like in the middle one. It's like, all right, you've seen this. What do you think the next action is? Based on the signals you're receiving, based on the stuff you're seeing, what do you think the right answer is? Right? Or which one do you want to try? Maybe right or wrong doesn't factor into it. Maybe it's just, what's your next act?
Yeah.
Right? And help them grow into that comfort level with doing that stuff. I mean, it's ultimately, you are going to be faced with decisions that have to be made, that you will reap the consequences for what happens one way or another. You will be recognized as the one who made the call, and it went either spectacularly well or it went spectacularly bad. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad outcome. It doesn't mean that you have to be punished for it. It doesn't mean that the psychological safety part comes into play. Yeah. So if people are comfortable making choices, informed choices, and they make the best choice they could with what they knew at the time, and then whatever the outcome was, we reflect on how it went. Did we make the right call? Could we have made a different call?
What did we learn from the call?
Exactly. What did we learn?
Did y'all get into the concept, the practice of decision quality in this? So there's this idea, I can't remember where it was. I'm sure several people have thought of it, but like, let's say you make a call and you don't get the outcome that you wanted. Does that mean that you made the wrong call? Because I think sometimes you can you can get a good outcome, but still have made the wrong decision. Like there's a couple of different things there, right? It's like,
and vice versa.
Yeah,
you can make
exactly.
you can make the right call and still have a bad outcome, because there are many factors that are
right.
So you should take different lessons. You will take different lessons about what to do in the future based on your understanding of the quality of your decision, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The value is in the learning, right? Are you going to, if we could go back in time, had to make that decision again, would you make the same decision again? Or would you, if you had the benefit of knowing what you know now, would you explore a different option? And we can't go back in time, and we can't redo the choice, but we can build the mental model that allows us to take that into account in our next decision opportunity.
I bet AI can help us with that too.
Can it?
All the hits today.
No, we haven't said Jira yet.
No, okay.
What's that? So what's interesting is, as I was working through things this week, it occurred to me that, and I kind of started with this here, are we focusing on the right thing? And besides the mindsets and the practices, do we stress enough that what we want them to get to is rapidly learning? It's a learning state of mind. It's not an agile state of mind. Forget all that stuff. It's about a learning state of mind, because if you're in a constant learning state of mind, you will automatically imbue yourself with agility, because as you're learning, as things change, you are going to have to change and adapt. If you're willing to learn, you're open to learning, and you make that continuous. If you've got that mindset of, we're not focused on being agile, we're focused on constantly learning. What are we learning? And, it used to be 25 years ago, the organization that, got to market first with their product was the winner. Well, it's not like that anymore. It's who's learning fastest.
Yeah. Yeah, the way I talk about it is, if you optimize for learning or create a learning organization, you're in a much better position to do things like ship on time and have high quality. And because really the root of the problem is, many places I go, they lack the specific knowledge of what to do, right? The problem is that they
what
can't
to do differently.
Kind of the same
Right.
thing, I think, is what I would say. It's like, it's people think about, we can't execute, like we can't move the molecules around fast enough. It's like, no, actually, there was a better way to do this. You just didn't know what it was. So the first thing to do was to learn the best thing to do, kind of like what Toyota does, right? And vast oversimplification. But like my understanding is, if you go to the factory floor, there's a guy welding doors on, and he's got a book full of what he learned about how to weld the door, and he's not doing it the same way he was doing it two months ago, right? And you could think,
Hope not.
move faster, door welder guy, as opposed to learn faster about how to weld doors better. That's a critical distinction that I try to make to people. Is that congruent, Jeff? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm talking about. It's when you think about even the manifesto, we are learning exploring and learning new ways. Yeah. Well, it says it right there. It's all about learning. And I don't know. Are you interested in learning how to do things better?
Or do you already have all the answers?
Or do you have all the answers already? Exactly.
Yeah. We've done this a million times. We know what we're doing. You are just coming in here and disrupting that.
Yeah. I mean, even if you do know everything, literally everything there is to know about how to best do your work today, the world is not static.
Right.
Something's going to change, and now you have a problem if you're not learning.
I had a situation once. This was many years ago, and there was a large group of team members from about 3 or 4 teams scattered around in a room, and we were about to kick off another new project, but we didn't need all of them for that project, so we were going to pick which teams went down this path, and then the other team would go down the other path. And I kind of got up there and I said, okay, so here's the challenge. We are going to be going on this new project. And I gave them the parameters of what this new product change was going to need to do. And I said, so if you are the type of person who wants to learn fast, you're the person who wants to try new things and see what happens and then adjust course and just redo things and I basically named a bunch of stuff like that, a bunch of statements like that. I said, if you hear that and you think that's me, move to that side of the room. And
if you're not,
go
get
to that
out.
side of the room. Well, no, and then I watched the people who did, and some people did move over there, and some people went over there, and I turned to the people over there and I said, "Why are you here?"
And what happened?
Was that inspiring for them?
No, it wasn't. That was meant. There's a coaching technique in which it's a shock and awe thing where you shock someone into a different state. Like they were in a complacent state. And they were like, what you just described sounds like work and I don't want to do work. So it's like, okay, why are you here then? What is it that you do? What do you want out of this? Right. And maybe they were the people who wanted to just be told what to do. Right.
What
But the
were the
people on that
responses?
side of the room, were the ones that made stronger, happier teams.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
think
think
we
there's
should-
a thing in there about motivated teams, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, they're effective. Build stuff around them.
One of the principles says something
Yeah.
about motivated teams.
Yeah.
it was a frustration moment.
Well, I am curious, though, the people that you posed the question. So then, what are you here for? What were the responses?
Wah, wah.
Well, I think that they fit within. I don't recall the exact responses, so I'm not gonna pretend to make stuff up. But I mean, it was stuff that was echoing along the. I'm not trying to learn new things. I'm just do. I'm just doing.
Mortgage-driven
here for.
development. Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't love this job. I love the paycheck.
That is hilarious. I'm gonna use that if you don't mind. Mortgage.
Jim Gillet, you can credit him because I lifted that off of him. They did a YouTube video on mortgage-driven development.
That is amazing.
Go look it up. It's kind of interesting.
And there are a lot of people who are more driven just by the paycheck than driven by the sense of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't vibe with those folks. I tend to do, like, when I'm hiring people, I like knowing why they got into this. What's your motivation? Why this career over another career? What drove you to this? And the ones who say, "Oh, well, this was the best way to make the most money," I'm just like, don't want you.
Right.
That's
Is there a place for them somewhere in Agile or software?
I guess that's a matter of opinion. My personal opinion is no. And here's why. Many years ago, when I say many, I'm talking about 30 years ago, I talked to somebody who was a developer, and I said, "You don't seem to like your job." At that time, we had supervisors, and I was his supervisor. And I said, "You don't really seem to like what you're doing." And he said, "Yeah, you're right, I don't." I said, "Then why are you here?" In a nice kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "To be honest with you, I thought it was a good way to make money. It paid X dollars, a lot more than anything else did. And once I got into it, I realized, God, I hate this stuff. But I'm 10 years in and nothing else pays anywhere close to it." So I said, "So, Mr. So-and-so, you're basically looking at 30 more years of banging your head against the wall doing a job that you really, really hate just for the money." And after a moment of silence, he's like, yeah, that's pretty much it." I thought,
Yeah, that seems
oh
like
my
a darkness.
God.
It reminds me of that Steve Jobs video where he says you got to find something you love because you never be great. Everything's difficult, right? But if you don't love it, you'll never get through the difficult parts and like spend enough time on it to really get great at it.
Yeah. So that's the mastery part, right?
I think sometimes
So we've
people think-
talked about autonomy, we've talked about mastery, and we've talked about why are you here, right? We've hit all the things that Dan Pink says drives creativity or drives motivation in creative space.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rough. I mean, yeah, God, there's really no good answer for that person. What do they do? So where did you end up? Is it so you were that person's supervisor?
Hmm.
Like, how did that? What can you share with us in terms
I,
of how you resolved that?
I basically just tried to help him see some of the brighter sides, I didn't know if he was just at a low point in his career. Um, I suspect that wasn't it. But we all go through these ebbs and flows, and if you get in a little trough there, it can look like everything is just blah, and you're in a rut. But and so when you see somebody in a rut, what you try to do is you just try to help them out, but you can't pull them out of the rut. That's their job. All you can do is support them, try to, be a champion for them, but they still have to do the hard work of pulling themselves out of the rut or making the change. And I don't know, I didn't follow his career afterwards, if he stayed in programming, because that's what we called it then, was programming. And I would be curious, but every once in a while, maybe frequently, we run into teams that have some members, not all, but some members that are in that mindset where it's like, it helps me pay the bills, okay? I got big bills, so I need a big paycheck, and that's what I need. And it doesn't matter whether I like it. I don't want to be innovative. I just want to churn
Just
out
tell me
some
what
code.
to do.
Tell me,
Damn it,
what to do.
And to be fair to them, it's a mystery to us, isn't it? Like why we find some things meaningful, some things you can just stare at forever and get into a state of flow and they're fascinating, and some things are so fucking tedious you can't bear to look at them. And the exact opposite set of things is what another person finds amazing and tedious. It's like you don't choose that stuff. I don't think it's best you can do is sort of observe it and go down the path that seems to beckon to you and see if you can find a thing that. There's a thing on my wall about ikigai, which is a Japanese word that is the confluence of all these things, the things that you love to do, things that are useful to the world, things that you can get paid for, things that are, there's a lot of things to put together a meaningful work experience. And it's not like it's a trivial thing.
So, you asked earlier, do we have a place for those people? And I think probably the answer might actually be yes. Like, well, we might prefer to have a team that was made up of all self-motivated people who were just jonesed about learning opportunities and being in that space. And I would argue if we had a team that was truly like that, that would be an awesome team, right? But the reality is we've got cross-functional teams made up of a lot of different personality types, and some of those people will be learners, and some of those peoples will just be willing to churn out stuff, and some people will be more natural leaders within those groups. So they all have different affinities. And if you get the right mix of people, having a team full of, I don't like thinking through it, but if you point me in the right direction, I will do it. Having them on a team with people who can set the direction and say, this is one of those things we need to get done. And the person goes, hey, I'm that guy. I will do that. Churn, 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 churn. Right? So maybe there is, maybe it's not as black and white as we would imply.
Worker bee / cultural ballast. That's what I hear you saying.
Is that what you hear?
Cultural balance.
And you say that I used argumentative language?
Nail them down, put them in boiling water, shock and awe. I have a list of violent metaphors. We should talk about nonviolent communication at some point because it's interesting. I don't know that it matters, but it's interesting.
So, Mike,
anyway.
you've described a much more inclusive sort of tent so that, it's a recognition that, everybody's not going to have the same motivations and drives, and that there is still a place. Fully acknowledging that, yes, it would be nice to have a dream team of everybody being driven or at least wanting to learn. And I think that's the crux of the matter. Even if you have a space that you're feeling comfortable and you don't want to expand outside of that, do you have a thirst for learning? And if you don't, I think the problem is then that can creep into other people. So when we have team working agreements, you got a team, and if everybody on the team has this thirst for learning except for one, okay, you can probably overwhelm them, or at least by osmosis.
That's what I'm thinking.
But the problem is, if you've got 4 people on that team, and the other 3 are the ones that really want to learn, and the other 4 are like, that becomes a cancer.
Then you got an energy vampire going on.
Yes.
Energy vampire. Yeah, this reminds me of the the distinction between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. I worked with a coach once who had a really good presentation on this. Shout out to Raven Kasha. How you doing, Raven? I'm sure you're listening, by the way. But the fixed, you guys heard, I don't know if this is a book or what, but there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And it basically mirrors what we talked about. Like either I'm done growing and I'm basically like, I can just, or who knows, I might be able to get better at this. Maybe I will never be the best, but I can be better than I am today at least.
And we proceed in agile ways of working with the assumption that we can always learn more. Why else do we do a retrospective at the end of every sprint? Because there's the presumption that no matter how well things went, it might be able to be even better.
That's probably why she talked about it. That's very wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yep. Yeah, learning is, it goes back to the creating a learning culture. Like if you're not learning, then you are ill-suited to exist in a world that's constantly changing. Like there's constantly differences in your environment that are popping up, and if you're not willing to absorb that and figure out what to change, you're kind of screwed. Maybe is one way to say.
And the rate of change to the world today. I mean, which one is the better survivor trait?
Yeah, and actually getting inside the decision loop of your competitor or your enemy, if you're John Boyd and talking about OODA loops, can be the difference between being outcompeted or not. So rapid learning is really kind of at the root of some of the value you're trying to bring to businesses.
Yeah. Which is not to say that an organization does not need the people who are just in a steady state of doing, but there is a potential when you are in a steady state that the playing field will shift around you, into which your steady state is maybe no longer as valuable to the organization.
Yeah, stable. All right. Well, I feel like that has been a lengthy discussion, probably valuable.
That was
Hopefully
a nice rabbit
valuable.
hole. I like the walls on it. It's really good.
Interesting. A lot of interesting stuff to say. So has that in fact been this agile thing?
I do believe it was this agile thing.
Fantastic. I'm Matt Beam.
I'm Mike Markey.
And who are you?
This one's Jeff Singleton. We'll see everybody.
And
See you
that's
next
the
week.
end of this agile thing.
Bye.
Stop.